So Edmund Fitton-Brown is a senior advisor to the counter-extremism project, and he formerly served as British ambassador to Yemen and as a coordinator of the UN Security Council's monitoring team. Edmund, welcome to you.
Thank you, John.
Edmund, what are your thoughts listening to the news coming out of Gaza, the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food at those UN sites, those UN food distribution sites and so on? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's a very complex picture, of course. It's very difficult on the ground because what the GHF is trying to do is to set up an alternative aid distribution mechanism. And they're not doing a particularly good job of it at the moment. They've got all sorts of logistical challenges, but they're also being challenged by deliberate Hamas sabotage. And I think one of the key things that I would like to say is that the GHF have reached out to the United Nations to try to get advice and support and partnership. But the United Nations, for theological reasons, is saying that they don't want to do that. At the moment, they're giving them the cold shoulder. And this is because the UN would like to keep UNRWA, UNRWA, in play in the Palestinian territories. And of course, the Israelis have lost confidence in UNRWA.
Yes, as we have reported a number of times and discussed a number of times in the past. And we're looking at, 4 approved sites through the GAF distributing food. There were 40, was there, or many more than that?
I'm sorry, I missed the last point.
Yes, I mean, there are, 4 GHF food distribution sites, replacing, dozens of food distribution sites before that. So impossible to imagine this could serve.
Yeah, I mean, the concern is real, and it's, I think this is, it's awful because it feels as if Palestinian lives are being played with. You have distressed people who are in desperate need of relief and support, and there is food and relief available. But it seems at the moment that you have a sort of a standoff that has been generated because of the Israeli and American loss of confidence in UNRWA and an unwillingness of the UN to engage with any alternative solution. And of course, from Hamas's point of view, any Palestinian deaths that occur are a good thing. And it's important to say, by the way, that the Israelis, although I'm sure that there have been many instances where there has been death from Israeli fire,
yes.
But I think that there have also been many cases where people who have used this service have then been brutalized and in some cases killed by Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, look, the motives of Hamas, there can be no dispute. They are cynical, they are murderous, they care nothing for the lives of Palestinians. This is, I guess, it is established beyond reasonable question. But from what we see in the hundreds of Palestinians killed queuing for food at these handful of sites, again, there will be conflicting, and there are conflicting accounts of what went on. But there are also out there reports of security forces opening fire on Palestinians queuing for food who strayed away from the approved route. And in those circumstances, it is difficult to have anything like sympathy for those responsible for the killings, because they cannot know that those who are being shot, those who are being killed, were in any way justifiable as targets, can they?
I think where that's the case, I think you're right. And I certainly don't have confidence that this mechanism it certainly isn't working properly at the moment. I don't have confidence that it will work, but I am very concerned at the international impetus to ensure that it doesn't work in order to return to the status quo ante, where you have UNRWA operating in its current compromised state, because UNRWA had become completely infiltrated by Hamas. And Hamas had built its terror apparatus in Gaza on the basis of diversion of aid.
Yes. Look, people are starving in Gaza, and I say not just is not the word, but many Palestinians are starving in Gaza, and the number of those suffering include journalists and include aid workers. This seems to be beyond question. We also then hear from Israel that there are many hundreds of aid trucks stacked up, ready to go in. And they say the UN is at fault for not taking advantage of that store of supplies and taking them to where they're needed. Do you believe that?
Well, I mean, the logistics are just not absolutely clear. It's certainly true that some of the trucks are already inside Gaza. And yes, I've seen the Israeli criticism that the UN should be making use of those. I think you clearly have some element of standoff here, and it isn't clear who exactly is sitting on their hands.
I mean, so what is your preferred course from where we are now? Clearly, you'd like to see more engagement on the part of the UN with the food distribution sites that are there. It would need a bigger plan than that, though, wouldn't it?
I think it does need a bigger plan. I mean, the first thing I would say is that the United Nations needs to abandon its insistence that there is nothing wrong with UNRWA. This has been a long-standing problem. Indeed, the United States, as you know, is also extremely critical of UNRWA. And there's plenty of documented evidence of UNRWA's misdeeds, which I won't go into because I don't think there's time. So I think what we need is for the UN to engage with a more open mind and to say, you know, we need to retain some supervision involvement in this. I think that the GHF would welcome that. But once you've done that, yes, of course, you need something on a larger scale. But more than that, you need a ceasefire. And it does look to me as if the talks about a ceasefire, although they're still proving to be extremely difficult to bring to a successful conclusion, they feel to me as if they are closer to an outcome than they have been for some time.
So moving into that political question then of a ceasefire and whether or not that can be achieved, there is this stumbling block. It's not the only one I know, but there is a stumbling block of Hamas's call for Israeli troops to be withdrawn. Is Israel ever likely to agree to a term of that kind?
Well, I think there will be discussions about what exactly that means, withdrawal from where. And I don't think that either Israel or Hamas has a position on that is unmovable. So I think it's worth keeping the pressure on and keeping the talks going. And as you know, there are voices within Israel that are extremely keen to see a ceasefire because they want to see progress on the hostages issue. So I don't think that this is an impossible situation. But of course, what we need to keep at the back of our minds is that until Hamas moves away from its insistence that the 7th of October 2023 was something that it would repeat again if it had the opportunity. We all know that what a ceasefire really means is a pause and we just re-enter the same problem. Now, the Israeli ambition has been to try and make that impossible, to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Yes. But that is going to be very difficult.
Well, that I guess is an understatement. But in a situation now where some 86% of Gaza is in the control of the Israeli occupation, and you have the defense minister talking about herding Palestinians into a guarded encampment around the ruins of Rafah, whatever the solution might be, that is not it.
Yes, I would agree that is not it. And, I think one of the things that is a little bit more promising is where you have some non-Hamas voices being raised elsewhere in the Palestinian territories and some potential local stakeholders emerging in places like Hebron. So I don't think it's an impossibility that some kind of ceasefire can emerge with the support of Arab states, which involves administrators in Gaza who are not Hamas. But Hamas will fight tooth and nail to sabotage that, and it won't be easy to achieve.
Edmund Fitton-Brown, thank you for sharing your views on the programme this afternoon. That's Edmund Fitton-Brown, who's a Senior Advisor to the Counter-Extremism Project and who formally served as British Ambassador to Yemen and as a coordinator of the UN Security Council's monitoring team.